Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Nice to see y'all. It is chimney fire season. It is the time of year where we get calls from customers and they said, I had a chimney fire. Does everybody know what a chimney fire is?
Money.
It does mean money. It means free money.
Insurance
pays for chimney fire damage. Homeowners insurance policies.
Leads to cracks often.
Oh, yes, it leads to cracks so frequently. So a chimney fire, essentially, you've got your chimney passageway. The chimney fire occurs when you have an excess of creosote formation on the interior wall of the chimney. And it can, basically, if you have little offsets like this in your chimney, you get what's called a creosote bridge. And it's where creosote starts to form up and it basically plugs the vent, like that. When you have a restriction in flow, oftentimes the material that's built up in this area ignites because the heat gets trapped by that creosote bridge, and all of a sudden it builds up, builds up, builds up, and it will actually take a spark off the wood and it will ignite this flammable material. And then the interior walls of the chimney catch on fire from top to bottom, like a jet engine. And it is like in excess of 2,500 degrees.
It's pretty crazy.
You imagine the amount of expansion that happens in that type of a situation. And so what we see is flue liners shatter, bricks shatter. I've even had some insurance jobs where adjusters called me out and the bricks literally exploded through the wall. Like,
what?
Exploded out into the room, and there's just like shit everywhere. So it's the real deal. Like, and it's what this whole trade is kind of about, is preventing chimney fires from happening. So chimney sweep's job is to not just sweep the chimney, but have a trained eye on the safety risks that could possibly come with inside that combustion system. So what causes chimney fires? The main cause is wet wood. Wet wood, defined by the Chimney Safety Institute of America, is wood that's in excess of 20% moisture content. And they've got these really handy little meters, these little stainless steel probes on them, and you can stick that into your firewood, push the button, and it gives you a digital reading on moisture content in the wood. All it takes is one wet batch of wood, a little bit of green batch of wood. And what happens, instead of getting what's called complete combustion of your fuel, you get incomplete combustion of your fuel. That's where there's too much moisture in your log. And when you add that baby into your stove or your fireplace, it first has to dry the moisture out of the wood before the fuel actually combusts. And when it is drying, what that causes is a very rich, thick, particulate, dense smoke traveling through the chimney structure. And it's that type of burning which cooks creosote into the interior walls of the chimney. It's like a very low temperature operation, like a smoker. You know, you're smoking some fish or whatever. It's like, it's holding the heat down and it's just gunking up the inside of the chimney. So the EPA has this website called Burn Wise, and they teach homeowners how to build a little woodshed. Get your firewood propped up off the ground, cover it with a tarp or a shed or whatever, get it air flowing around it so it can dry out, and use your moisture meter so that you have 15 to 20% moisture content in your wood. Because if you have 15 to 20% moisture content in your wood, you achieve complete combustion of your fuel, which means very little gases off of the wood. And the interesting thing about wood is people don't actually know that wood is a gas fireplace still. Because wood is essentially absorbing photons from the sun, right? It's like this big solar battery, and it's actually storing gases inside of it. And when you see flames come out of the top of wood, it's the gases that are escaping the carbon.
That makes sense.
It's gases off of the wood that are combusting, and that's where you see the flame. So all fireplaces are gas fireplaces.
That explains the blue flames.
There you go. What's up, Jake?
Can trash being burnt in the fireplace?
No, you don't want to. You don't want to.
No, I mean, can it produce creosote?
Oh yeah. So if you're burning trash, then you have byproducts that are other than gas, and
Plastics.
then you have basically trash accumulating on the inside of the chimney, and that can also accumulate quicker and cause chimney fires.
What about like water getting down in there?
Water getting inside the chimney?
Yeah, and then as it heats up.
Yeah, so if you got no chimney cap at the top of the chimney and you got water coming down and saturating all your masonry, and then you have a low temperature fire and a plug, then all of that masonry that's inside of there, if you have a chimney fire, it's just gonna pop even more because you've got a larger temperature difference and change. And so if you heat that up real quick when it's wet, I think that's when they explode, like out the wall. because it's like bam. Actually, I had an experience one time where I replaced a refractory panel in a prefab metal fireplace, and this refractory panel I had for a long time, very early on, and I had it stored outside, and it didn't even get rained on. It just absorbed the moisture from the air. And I put that baby in, and she wanted to use it right away. The thing exploded when she had a fire. It literally exploded, and luckily there was a screen in front of the fireplace because she was sitting right there with her back. It exploded on her back. And I was like, holy crap, I learned a lesson. And it was luckily not an expensive one. But that's what happens when, good point, when you get water inside the chimney. So to touch again, 3rd degree creosote. That's when you have this shiny black, caramelized, like this creosote is cooked into the chimney. Yesterday, I was at a house, and it wasn't just cooked in, it was an unlined flue, and that's the worst. You can see there's no creosote bridge, but looking down this chimney, it's like shiny black creosote that can't be removed with a brush or a scraper. And it's interesting, you see flue tiles on a lot of chimneys with no chimney liner going down through there. So basically you just got 1 unit thickness of chimney with no liner going through the framing and through all the combustibles around the masonry. This is like the worst thing that somebody could have, an unlined flue with 3rd degree creosote buildup inside of it. So
So those are not flue tiles going down?
No, see how it changes right here?
Okay.
Yep.
That's actually the back side of this brick.
Really?
And that's downstairs.
Do they part it smooth, or is it just that much creosote making it smooth in there?
That's what I was wondering.
Sometimes there's a skim coat in there, but the skim coat a lot of times is just mortar, it's not refractory. And so it's got to be refractory mortar, insulating mortar, at least an inch, if it's an unlined flue. So yeah, she had vertical cracks in her firebox, vertical cracks in the back side of the facing because there's no refractory cement on the back side of this. That's a Denny's. But if she has a chimney fire in this chimney, it's going to burn her house down because there's no liner. The liner's purpose is to contain all heat and products of combustion through the structure of the chimney. That's why they were added to the code in like '68. Is they learned that if you don't have a liner inside there, the chimney allows heat to escape and it burns the house down, instead of just the liner getting damaged and replace the liner inside the chimney. So Steven's on a job right now for my aunt, Courtney's aunt, Aunt Cheryl. One season. I swept her chimney 1 year ago, and she had one wet batch of wood. And it caused a creosote plug because the way that her chimney was constructed, it had a freestanding wood stove with a thimble right here. So coming off the top of the wood stove, first offset at the elbow, going through the wall, next offset, another bend, going up, another offset,
A complete 90 where it bottlenecked down into nothing.
and then another one. This is looking up inside of that passageway. So the tiles inside her, right through the thimble, I could see there's a vertical crack in the tile from a chimney fire. And this is after we got some tiles torn out. It's a real tight passageway. So we're tearing out the old broken tile and putting in a new stainless steel insulated one. But one wet batch of wood. And all covered by homeowners insurance. Fire damage is covered by homeowners insurance. And the interesting thing about that is that she made a claim, and it was like they were trying to find any reason not to cover it. They denied it, and I said, nope, you gotta submit a rebuttal. Submitted a rebuttal, had an adjuster actually come out. I had her son remove the stove and access the connector so that they could actually see the crack. And I literally had to talk her through.
Is that the one you were talking to on us?
Yeah, you were there. So I had to talk her through what happened and why it was fire damage, because they thought, oh no, chimney fires are normal. That's normal.
Firebox.
Yeah. It's normal to have a fire in your firebox, yeah. A lot of times it's like just not really understanding. And so got her there, explained everything in great detail. She's like, yeah, duh, this is covered.
He says great detail. It was like immaculate detail.
Exact. Like, that's what it takes. You know? So if the chimney doesn't get destroyed, sometimes we can just remove the 3rd degree creosote with what's called the chemical PCR. PCR stands for poultice creosote remover. And it's like this white glue that you coat down inside of the chimney, and it will extract the buildup from the surface. So you got like this little bell-shaped applicator, and you apply it like a squeegee. You can also spray it.
What's up?
But it's the only thing that I know that removes this level of buildup. So there you can see black glaze right there in an area where the material was applied. And over 48 hours of running a fan through it after you apply it, it literally extracts it off like newspaper on silly putty. Like silly putty on newspaper.
That's it, it's falling off?
That's falling off.
Wow.
So as it dries, it like pulls it out of the clay on the liner.
Like when you see dry clay, like in the ground where it's all cracked and just out there dry, and that stuff just comes right off like what you
Yeah.
Hey, where is that thing? We gotta get one of those.
I got one.
There's a bell shape. You can do that with an electric winch, actually.
Yeah.
They sell them at Harbor Freight. I never bought theirs because they charge like $2,000 for a $400 set.
I used the boat winch on that door though.
Yeah, that's smart.
24 to 48 hours of dry time. And then you look down and it's pulled out the creosote that's been baked into that masonry surface. And then you go and you remove the stuff that's dropped down.
You just sweep it out, right?
And then you use your rotary sweeper again and sweep it out. This process is even covered by homeowners insurance. Me and Montrell did one time in Lake Oswego. got it done right in time for Christmas. And then there you go after. It's like clean. This, I know the father and son who invented this product. They have a whole bunch of different other chimney products and they're out of Indiana. And this particular mix was a complete accident.
What?
They were in their lab, in this little farm lab out there. Yeah. And they had two different products, and there was a spill. And the two products mixed together, and it was an accidental invention.
That's pretty awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Oops. That's a priceless one.
And now it's like one of the most revolutionary products used a lot on the East Coast, but it's just making its way out here. And I don't know anybody else who does it, who uses it out here.
Wow.
Nice.
So if you can't do a PCR, a lot of companies, they'll just tear the entire chimney down. Complete demo.
Nice.
And so then it makes it real easy for the insurance company to pick our $10,000 bid versus their $20,000 or $30,000 bid. And they're like, oh yeah, that's way better. So, any questions on any of the topics here? Chimney fire season, wet wood, 3rd degree creosote, PCR versus demo.
I noticed after you apply the PCR and you clean out your cavity, getting the refractory foam to stick to the walls is kind of tricky. Like there's not any sort of primer before you put the refractory foam on of a sort because it's still got some of that real slimy product is PCR, real slick.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it seems like that doesn't come off and it makes it hard for the other shit to stick.
So by using the cable brush attachment, it's like a 1/4 inch cable and it spins. You kind of can scrub the internal surface.
Get some dry exposed.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just kind of reaming it out again, like a colonoscopy.
Rough colonoscopy.
And it'll get you a better, substrate too. But another thing might be to pass the applicator with no material on it, just wet, as kind of like a squeegee.
Oh, sure.
To get it clean and then let it run the fan through, let it dry a little bit. But then I would just go, wetter on your first pass to try and get just, like a primer coat, basically. Yeah. Let that harden up and then go with a heavier coat.
With a tighter piece of foam, really pull hard to get to the sides of it.
Right.
That was a little bit of a pain that day.
And that is the hard part, is sometimes you got a flue that's not a standard size and you kind of have to custom cut. You've done it before, Caleb's done it before, and each time it's like this creation of an applicator, and that's what you come across.
I got some seat cushion foam and cut out a piece of plywood that was just smaller than the size of it and put some flashing to kind of help keep the foam supported. And that worked awesome, just to cut and fit and shape that.
Little seat
Heads
cushion.
up for you guys, we have to do
One
that.
more thing that worked good was taking a 2x4 and lagging it to that bell, because the rope wants to do this on you. So you want to bring this thing up at like all messed up. That 2x4, 20-foot 2x4, you had to pull a lot, but it kept that bell straight.
That's what the winch is really good for. You can position a point and you're not kind of using your arm strength, and that's where you can get off center. So 2x4 or I guess we got to get another electric winch for those jobs. But any other questions?
Yeah, with the wood moisture, so what happens if it's less than 15% moisture? Like
If it's less than 15%, it's probably kiln dried wood, and those really shouldn't be put in a firebox because you can actually overfire your masonry in your firebox, and it can cause cracking, like the vertical cracks that you see go through the back wall.
Too much heat and
Too much heat, too high of operation of heat output. That wood, you typically just want to put in a manufactured system, and you'll see the guys that use it are like commercial kitchens that have wood-fired grills that are like on all the time. I've cleaned a couple of those systems for the Rock Pizza. Have you ever heard of the Rock Pizza?
Yeah, I like it.
And they're at like high temperature all the time. The only time I can clean that chimney is at 4 in the morning, because that's when it's at the lowest temperature, and it's still too hot. I actually burnt a brush one time, running a brush. Yeah.
What about burning like pallets?
Pallets, as a starter,
Because all the
you know.
all the glue in them and shit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a starter, not like a regular fuel source, but you know, you've got your different types of wood species, and you want a soft wood or something that's easy to work with as a starter, just to kind of get it going. But then your main fuel source, where you have an extended burn time, energy dense, consistent heat, long, clean burn.
I know that some woods, they don't lose their combustibility like your cedar and your cherry. Is using the old wood that's been down for a long time, is that going to add combustibles to the chimney?
Old dry wood is good. I mean, it's just like, so like you said, if you get a wood that's below 15% moisture content, you're just going to have a really high heat put combustion burn. And so I would maybe not throw a bunch of those pieces in the fireplace all at one time. I would maybe just do one, you know. If it's a larger piece of wood, it's going to combust slower. But if you had like a bunch of 4 or 5 inch rounds, those are like the perfect size to get a very, very hot fire going. If you have a big log and it's like super dense, it takes a lot longer for that, you know, log to burn
Depends if
down.
it's a split or a round too.
Yeah,
Big difference.
yeah.
So I've got a question out of curiosity. My buddy growing up, him and his dad lived in the shop, and they had this massive wood burning unit, and they'd throw little chunks of coal in there. But like they always told me if they threw a big chunk, it'd melt through the bottom of it. So out of curiosity, are there units that can burn coal, or what's like the difference as far as the heat ratio? Do you know?
Well, so coal is like no moisture content, right? It's basically a combustible fuel that's compressed, and it is very high heat output. Energy density, coal versus wood. Coal is way more energy dense than any wood. So it's, yeah, a big piece. It'll get so hot that yeah, it burns through. You know, cast iron, steel with
Does it
insulation.
have a lot of like creosote essentially as well?
A little byproduct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the creosote is from woods, is like all the little oils and saps and moistures that are, you know, in the organic material. And so it's basically the byproduct or the fuel that can't combust when you're burning wood, that's accumulating inside the exhaust of the chimney.
You know, they ought to make like a catalytic converter for a chimney.
They do.
They do?
Yeah. San Francisco actually had it. They were installing those for quite a long time
Yeah.
to try and get real efficient burning fireplaces, and then they just completely banned fireplaces because that's what they did.
Huh.
The crazy thing though, about fireplaces, or I guess the political discussion of carbon and CO2 and all that stuff, is the wood stoves now that have the catalytic converters in them that we're installing. They meet 2 grams of creosote production per hour, which is like the best it's ever been. The EPA required this of all manufacturers. And so at that efficiency level, wood stoves now burn so clean, you can't even see smoke come out of the top of the chimney. And it's actually true renewable net zero carbon fireplace option. Like 0 carbon footprint, because they crunch the numbers, the EPA. If you let a tree fall down in a forest and decompose over 100 years, and it emits its carbon slowly through just the normal degradation process, it's a larger carbon output than chopping that tree up and burning it in a high efficiency wood stove with a catalytic converter.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So do we ever install this?
All the time.
I've never heard of one.
All the time. The Regencies, they all meet
Is it
that.
just set on top of the unit, or how does that work?
It's like a little cartridge like this that's in the ceiling of the stove, and different stoves will have different.
Oh, so
ceiling.
it's in the unit.
It's in the unit.
Oh, okay.
It looks
Yeah.
like a little honeycomb puck.
Honeycomb.
And then basically your flue adjustment has that inside there. It's got this little box that you got to get it up in there, and it's in the whole piece that you bring attached to your unit.
Mm-hmm.
and then it's actually, you have to wait for the unit to get to a certain heat and then engage the converter.
The bypass damper. Yeah.
That's cool.
Is that
Let's see if I can pull up the manual on one.
titanium?
I'll pull up the installation manual if I can find one.
That's rude. Mess up my video.
The CI
I'm telling him it was you.
2700 is the best stove on the market, which is kind of like the Mac Daddy Regency model. I can't find it for some reason. It's all those fireplaces. There we go. Wood inserts. Pro Series CI 2700. Literature and specifications. Manual. So that's what it looks like. Real large glass viewing area. People always think, wood stove, well, I want to see the fire. They're used to these old ones that have no door, with no glass. That's kind of the schematics of it. Just slides into the firebox, has a 6-inch chimney liner. It's got many different faceplate options. Clearance to combustible list. It's rated for 78,000 BTUs per hour. It's like 2 furnaces. I actually put this in my house because I wanted to do testing with it. I wanted to better understand its ability, and it will run you out of the house. You gotta be naked. You gotta have all the windows and doors open, and you're naked and you're still sweating.
Wow.
So if you got a nice fan, a ceiling fan, or
There's no
something
picture of this in your head.
There's a video.